Okay. Yeah. Good day, everyone. How are you doing? This is probably the last set of sessions for today, so you probably feel yourself tired. How does it feel? Yeah, I'm tired myself. This is the second session for today, so. My name is Vladimir Sidorov, and I'm product support engineer at Akamai. So today we are going to talk about Test Center API. Before we start talking about the API itself, let me just tell you a story. So Bob is a new engineer at ABC company, where his main duties are to maintain and perform regular updates to corporate website. ABC company used Akamai for content delivery. And all the delivery configuration was created and maintained by, let's say, Sam, who recently quit the company. So now Bob needs to learn how to deal with a pretty big property manager configuration file with many rules and many sub-rules. And on his new role, Bob will be adding features, removing features, do performance optimization, and so on and so forth. So what do you think? How does Bob feels about that? He needs to deal with very unfamiliar configuration, and so what do you think he feels? He's probably not comfortable with that. Well, there are cases when you are comfortable dealing with someone's code, but that is the case when every piece of the code is covered by some sort of tests. But unfortunately, that is not always the case. So what do we have here? We have pretty much big configuration which was created by Sam. We have new employee, Bob, who is supposed to maintain the configuration. And we have, let's say, his boss or business unit who is desperate to get new update rolled out right now. So he literally did not have a time to learn all the configuration stuff, and he is under pressure. Well, so here is the request. So business unit need to add new TTL for a new image. Okay, wait. For a new image path, /assets, /users, /wildcard. So they want Bob to add a new path match rule, and TTL of 1 hour for that. And eventually it turned out that user profiles also under the path /assets, /user, /profile. And because this page do have personal user data, this page should never be cached. But the problem is that Bob didn't know about that. So what did he do? Is he just, okay, I need to add a rule. He go to the Akamai control center, he edit configuration file, he do the changes, he add new rule, set TTL to 1 hour, and push it to staging. Then, as everyone would do, he tests changes against staging. He just opens this path. Okay, here is the image. For some reason, the content management system customer used didn't have file extension for images, so that is why he used path as a match criteria. So he does a test. He sees that images getting TTL of 1 hour. He's happy with that. He he made sure that configuration works as expected, and he pushed it to production. And it didn't take too long before first customer called in to technical support complaining about seeing someone else's data on his profile page. So simple change caused service incident, data breach, and loss of customers' confidence. The image might be even worse. So here is the problem statement. Without understanding every single piece of the property manager configuration file, it is oftentimes very difficult to make sure that even a small change won't break other things. Do you think Bob could have avoided this? The answer is yes. What do you think? I can hear you. Okay. So I think that everyone in this room have heard about test-driven development. For those of you who do not know, test-driven development is a software development process when a developer first writes a test for a feature code and then write an actual code. That is kind of like best practice in IT industry, one of the best practices. And today we are going to see how we can leverage the same idea of test-driven development at Akamai Test Center API for configuration change management, and how we can use this idea in order to minimize number of service incidents attributed to like bad testing or some other things. So here is our agenda. It's pretty much straightforward. So we are going to talk about common challenges when it comes to making a change by customer or by our internal team. Next, we will talk about what do we mean by test-driven deployment. And then we will dig into Akamai Test Center API and finally wrap everything up with future plans and Q&A. Make sense? Good. So let's move on to the next slide. So first of all, every time our customers or internal teams implement a new change on a website, there is always a question floating in the air. Is it really safe to do this or that change? So no one wants to break things. No one wants to cause a service incident and then deal with consequences. So everyone wants to be safe. So how can test-driven deployment approach help here? Well, first let's talk about what do we mean by test-driven deployment. So the idea of test-driven deployment is to cover as many endpoints as possible with comparison tests. You can call them a regression tests or, well, whatever way you like it. So we encourage our customers to use Akamai Test Center API to create test cases whenever possible for all the most important parts of the website. After pushing property manager configuration file to staging environment, in addition to your existing test, you can run tests in Akamai Test Center API and see what changed. By the way, you can not only use Akamai Test Center API, there is also Akamai Test Center available on Akamai Control Center. So any tests, any test definitions you have created using API would be visible at Akamai Control Center, and everything you created at Akamai Control Center directly will be also available through the API. So let's first take a look on what solutions already exist. Well, first, which is unfortunately still exists, it's no tests. So yeah, there are still cases when no one tests configuration at all and just push it to production. Fortunately, this doesn't happen often, but it does. The second option is manual test. So as like with Bob's case, it does mean that people just tend to test only the parts they changed. They do not test, they do not account to any regression. They do believe that, okay, this is just one small change, and I'm not going to break anything. That's almost always wrong. And that is why we are talking here. And third option is DIY solutions. So DIY solutions is quite a good option, but and they can be very advanced. But there is a problem with them. In order to come up with a good DIY solution, you need to put a lot of like man hours. You need to know Akamai well. So it takes it's very time-consuming, it's very resource-consuming, and our goal here at Akamai to help you as much as we can to focus only on things which truly matter to you. Because test is not your business, right? That is not what you're doing at your company. So our goal is to help you offload that part, or at least make it simple. So usually the process of making changes using test-driven deployment looks like this. So you create a test. So for example, you want to change something. You, before making the actual change, you create a test. If tests already exist, you need to make sure that it is going to cover your case. If it doesn't, you need to make changes to the test. Then you make whatever changes you wanted to. So you change your actual property. Then you push it to staging network. Then you run Akamai Test Center. You run test using Akamai Test Center API or Akamai Control Center GUI, and you run it against staging. You see what has changed. And then, if you are satisfied with all the changes, you push your configuration file to production. If you are not satisfied with your changes at this stage, you just deny it, right? And you need to make sure that, why did this unwanted change happen? You need to go back to your configuration and make sure if there is any conflicting rules. So, for example, like we need to change TTL just for images. We do comparison test, and we do see that instead of just this URL, we do see some changes we didn't meant to do somewhere else. That is a red flag. At least, even if you don't fully understand the configuration, even if you don't understand what your site is like supposed to be, how it should work, it is a red flag. That is not the change you did. So you need to go to someone who know about that. So let's take a look at Akamai Test Center API. So the key benefits of using Akamai Test Center API is that you do not need a DIY solution. If you already have it, sure, you should continue using it, but if you don't, you might probably fulfill all your needs, all your requirements just using Akamai Test Center API. Akamai Test Center API is a long-term program to improve safety of customers. So this is really a long-term program, so we are really keen on working on it. So that's why it is good. And it also helped to improve efficiency. So for example, we can use Akamai and customer. We can use, in some cases, we can use same set of tests. We can work on them together in some cases, so that we are sure that all this website is covered with automatic tests. And it is available for everyone for free. So with Akamai Test Center API, you can manage your test definitions, manage and view your test results, and view test center activity. Let's say, for example, someone in your organization also use Test Center API, and you could see what was done, what was the tests run before. That's just for tracking purpose or for change management, whatever. So you can use this API as a part of automated system to test and compare the behavior of your production website before activating your change configuration. The goal of this program is to reduce number of service incidents attributed to insufficient testing, increase user safety, and changes they are making. The main focus is safety, not the correctness of changes. So please do remember that this is not functional testing. So we don't know how your site is supposed to behave. We don't know whether it should be no store or 1 hour of TTL or 1 day of TTL. We don't know about that. But our goal is to make sure that you only make changes which you meant to do, right? So there is no other degradation, no other changes which you didn't know about. So goal is to make sure that changes do not break a website in a catastrophic way. And so here are the features you can, at the moment, this is version 1.0. So you can compare your staging environment versus production environment based on these keys, like response code, response headers, CP code, caching options, cache key, origin server, and some metadata variables. Okay, let's now take a look how we can run simple tests for a website. So first, in order to begin using Akamai Test Center API, you need to create a test definition. Test definition is the smallest entity which you deal with when you need to test your website. So if you use API, you just need to send a simple post request with this body. You specify a host name. This is my website for different tests. You come up with some fancy name for that and with some description, so that you can later refer to that information to understand which test is which. And here is the result if your test was successfully created. So it is 201 response code, and here you get test definition ID. So you would need to use the test definition ID further to create test cases inside of this test definition. So you can create 5 test definitions per host name, and you can create up to 15 test cases per test definition. So it is about 75 different test cases for one single host name. The reason why you need to use different test definitions is because, for example, you have e-commerce website, you have product page, you have cart checkout page, end user page. So you want to test them separately in some cases. Again, it depends on how you manage your changes. So that's why we have different test definitions, and you can create 5 of them for a host name. So after the test definition is created, you will get test definition ID, and based on that test definition, you create a new test case. So let me just go back. So you put test definition ID here, you send post request, and this is the post body. This is the test definition inside of the post body, and this is the response. This is not full response. But again, when you create a test case, there is a test case ID, and it mentions which test definition ID this test case belongs to. So again, this test case also have a description, have URL. So here you have specific URL this test case was created for. You can, when you create a test case, you can test a single page, or you will also can check box to test all the embedded content. For example, if you have images, JavaScript files, CSS files embedded into a page, and you want to include them into a test, you can just check box compare embedded content, and this test case will test this page and all the embedded content on that page. And this is just this one test case. So then you create test execution. Test execution is kind of set, okay, which test definitions I want to run at the moment. And once it is ready, you create a test run. Test run is another object. We will see a relationship between different objects in a few moments. So test run is when you actually run your test. So it is the object which signifies that a test run has been started. So test run can have multiple different test executions. So for example, you can put up to 5 test executions in one single test run. And when it's done, you get this response, and that's it. So this is about API. And this is how your newly created test definition and test case look like when you go to Akamai Control Center. So we've got a host name. Wow. We've got, sorry. We've got a host name, we've got test definition, description, and name, and we've got one test case here. So after the test run, well, you can you can view test results using API, and as well as you can view them in Akamai Control Center. So here is the test case details, and here how you can, for example, in this case, I changed TTL for file.txt from Staging production. Okay, from 1 hour, 1 minute, I don't see it. Yep. From 1 minute to 15 minutes. And you see it here, right? So it is up to you to accept this change or not. And as I was talking before, if you do see some change which shouldn't be here, you validate your changes, you talk to someone who is more familiar with the configuration file. And that is how you can avoid broken website. So we have talked about like few different entities like test case, test definition, execution, and test run. It's a little bit hard. I think it is a little bit hard to understand relationship between them. So here is some sort of like diagram in order to understand it better. So the test case is the smallest thing you can have, but you can run one single test case. So every test case should belong to a test definition. So test case, you can have 15 test case per test definition. The information included in test case is test ID, definition, URL, and some like comparison settings, and so on and so forth. So on top of it, you have test definition. Test definition is you can think of it like a container with your test cases. So you have a host name, I mean like website, so you wanted to run tests. Okay, so here is the test definition, run it. So test definition, you can have 5 test definitions per host name. It also have test definition ID, and host name, and description status. Status could be active or inactive. So, and we also have test execution. Test execution is just, it is kind of like a wrapper for test definition. You have 1 test execution per test definition. So why do we have test execution and test definition like separated? Is because you can run your test against different environments. For example, you have like, you don't want to run staging against production. You want to run, for example, staging against your website which you use like for development purpose. For example, your website is www.example.com, and you want to run it against, you want to run staging against, let's say, dev.example.com. That's why you need to test definition, because test definition is some sort of like a set of rules which you want this particular test follow during the test. And then you have test run. So test run is a whole object which you use in order to run the testing. And okay, we've got 16 minutes left, and yeah, this is the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, I'm helped to answer. And we've got a product manager for Akamai Test Center API here in the room. So if you have any questions, like about roadmap, future plans, you can talk to Amit later after this session is done. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand.
What's the user agent string used by the test? What's a user agent string used by the test cases?
So question was, what is the user agent string
Is it customizable?
For test? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Let me go back. So is it here? When you create a test case, you can specify which user agent string to use. Okay. I do not have a screenshot here, but if you want, we can just go to Akamai Control Center and see it. Yeah, but you definitely can specify different request headers, including a user agent string.
It's interesting to see that a lot of Akamai folks are using the old control center.
Sorry?
It's interesting to see that a lot of old Akamai employees are using the old center versus you're trying to us to use the newer. So you want us to be the guinea pig.
Yeah, well, there is a reason for that. I'm a support engineer, so I'm more often use just command line. When I deal with the problem, I just use command line, and sometimes I use Akamai Control Center, but probably our customers use it more often, or like sales guys use this more often than support. That's the reason. I mean, I do have access to new GUI, but I just didn't get it.
Just an observation. This is my second presentation where I saw people using the old.
Yeah, eventually this one will be shut down, so everyone will be moved to new GUI. But at the moment, yes. Sorry about that. Okay. So we create test, additional settings. So you can specify any user agent here, right? And you can, not only user agent, you can specify any other like request headers here, maybe even your custom request header. Did I answer your question?
Yes. Can you create a template?
Can I do, sorry, what?
Can I create a template so I can use again and again?
Can you create a template of test case? Yeah, so with the API, you use JSON objects, right? So you can use it as a template. You can put them on any like version control system, and you can whole your team can work on the same set of test cases. So yes, you definitely can reuse test cases. Moreover, there is a functionality in Akamai Test Center API. You can clone test. So you can take existing test case, you can clone it, you can again change it, so you don't need to create, every single time a new JSON object for a test case. Yes, please.
Just a quick clarification question. You said I can test staging versus production. Is that true? Currently, what my company is doing is we're running a curl command in a Python script, so we have to change our host file to test versus staging and production separately. Can I do this at the same time with this?
So let me repeat your question. So your question is, can you test staging versus production?
Yes. So currently, I have to test them individually and then compare them myself. Can I test them together and?
Yes, that's the point. Okay. So you can test staging versus production and see what has changed.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you use this to test or generate large volume tests to simulate a bot attacks or DDoS attacks?
Did I use this Test Center API to test a large volume of websites?
Requests coming in. So but to simulate a DDoS attack or a bot attack.
Well, you can use it, yes. Did you have any problems?
No, we haven't used it, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, you can use it for a website of any size.
I think her question is.
Sorry, I didn't get.
I think her question is, can you run a DDoS attack using this? And I don't think you can do that. You need to use a cloud test.
Can I run a DDoS? Well, so as I said, you can have 75 test cases per host name, and you can't run more than that at a time. So, well, I doubt that you can run a DDoS attack using this. But yeah, that's a very good question.
You would use cloud tests.
Sorry, I didn't get tap test. Yeah.
Cloud test.
Sorry, didn't get that.
Cloud
tests. Yeah, for DDoS, yeah, cloud test is much better. But that will be like a violation of any possible policies.
So what is the max number of tests you can run at once?
So maximum number of tests you can run at once. You can run 5 test definitions at once.
Okay.
And each test definition has 15 test cases, so it is 75 test cases at once.
So currently we're using Cloud Test. So we've created over 1,000. We have a pretty complex config, but we're using Cloud Test to actually run a similar.
Yeah, but a cloud test is for, it's load testing, right?
It is, but
yes.
We're using it for this. That's why I was asking about the limit, because we have over 1,000 tests running right now to validate our config.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if your max number is configurable.
Okay, so yeah, here I'm not sure about like what is the maximum number, but as far as I know, it's 75
Okay.
test cases. Yeah, we can talk about this a little bit later after this session
Sure.
is done. Yeah, it will be an interesting use case. Yes, sure.
First question is, if we have created a test suite or test cases using Cloud Test, is there a way to import that into this rather than trying to duplicate all the work again? Or is there any roadmap for that if it doesn't exist today?
Honestly speaking, I don't know how to use this from a cloud test.
No, not use it from Cloud Test. I'm saying if I already have
Oh,
test
if you
cases
already
in
have
Cloud
some
Test
tests in
built,
Cloud Test,
I want to bring them
import
over
it here?
Yes, migrate it over here. Why duplicate the work of creating
Well,
the,
at the moment-
like in his case, if he's got 1,000 cases,
Yeah.
if he has to rerun this, he has to create another 1,000 case. You have a single tool that you can reuse to
Yep.
import the config.
Well, at the moment you can't import tests from cloud test to here, but it is probably on a roadmap.
Is it on the roadmap?
Okay.
Now, this is happening, this test is happening from, I guess, I don't know, any of your servers or wherever you spin it up, right? If I have Kona on Botman, what will happen to my test case? Will they get blocked?
Currently, the test run is happening actually on AWS. When we make a request, the request goes to the AWS server and it spins up a new page. So it's not a curl or not a spoof. It's basically a new browser which is spinned up every time, and a fresh request is made through a browser. And then it basically compares everything in that URL, including the embedded objects as well. So that way, it's not limited by. And to answer the question about how many requests we can make to that, 75 is the correct number, but 75 is not a stuck number. It keeps on changing because the queuing mechanism allows you to take 5 requests in a go, but then as the queue clears up, the fresh request starts pushing in. So that 75 is a continuously changing queue number. So it's not that after 75 it will not take. At a time it can take 75 requests, but that keeps on changing. And that number is configurable from the backend, but not through the UI. But if there are requests, we can look into that. Unfortunately, we only support GET requests right now, not POST anymore, or any content which is behind logins. So that's again on the roadmap, supporting POST and content behind the logins, but because of security concerns, we are not able to implement it right now, but that's on the roadmap right now.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? If not, let's call it a day. Please rate the application. And I have one question to you. So when we do use Akamai Test Center here in Akamai Control Center, so there is a title, Detect Unexpected Behavior. So further, sometime next year, we plan to add Akamai Test Center 2.0, which will be used for functional testing. So at the moment, we plan to add one more button here. So my question to you, do you think, so we are thinking about the name, right? So we are thinking about the name, I mean like title for this button. Do you think that title confirm expected values will be like easy to understand for that kind of functionality?
Are you saying that the test cases that fail will land up with this?
Yes. Yep. So what do you think about? So we do have two options. One is just functional testing, is just like industry standard, and we are thinking about more like easy to understand title, which is confirm expected values. Do you think it will be easy to understand that title?
Well, you've got detect unexpected behavior. Wouldn't it make sense to just have it be confirm expected behavior? So if those are contrasting things.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a very good idea. Thank you. All right. Yeah, I think that we like 4 minutes earlier. I think it is not a problem. So if you have time, please raise this session in your application and have a good day. Thank you.